Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello.
All right. So with that, all right. So welcome to the Mikestand Weekend Edition. Hope everybody's had a good weekend. I hope everybody's had a fun and enjoyable weekend this weekend. Of course, if you guys haven't already, you guys can help us out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. It'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions, and we will try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So, as of course, we wait to see if anybody else shows up. Rick? How's your weekend going for you?
Not too bad. It's been fairly good overall. Fortunately, although I did mention this off here, I did find out an acquaintance of mine died on last Thursday. So
Sorry
from
to hear.
church. No, thank you.
Were they a
So
bit older, or were they your age?
yeah, yeah. She was 75,
Okay.
and she's she had a few kids, and of course she had a husband as well. So
Do you have any
yeah.
grandkids?
I'm not sure whether she had any grandkids or not, but I know she had kids. So
Well, at that age, it would be likely. Then she probably did
grandkids,
have grandkids as well. But,
yeah, for kids had kids for
well,
sure.
at least look at it this way. Her mortal suffering is because
Yeah,
you said she's a friend from church, right?
yeah,
So she's up with the Lord right now. So
yeah.
um,
That's good. It's just yeah. I feel the loss a little bit, but it's more her husband that feels it a lot more. And of course, he's a believer, so he also knows this. But it's still hard,
mhm.
no matter which way you look at it. But yeah, and we actually had a men's breakfast on Saturday yesterday at my church, and that's sort of how I found out about it too.
Yeah.
When I went to that, found out about it. So
And he passed it along to you what happened, the husband.
yeah, well, the church, yes, the husband was there too, so yeah, Other than that, my week went pretty good. I'd say. Mhm.
Yeah. Um,
Mm. And your week? How'd your week go? Besides, of course, what we saw on
okay.
the
I
air.
finally was getting caught up. I basically finally getting caught up on everything, and of course, as I was telling you off air before the show started, of course, and of course, some of you already know about this, but Thursday was having some technical issues. That's why we didn't really have a show. So,
Yeah, I've had those problems where I had technical problems, had to end the show early or not go on because of it.
hmm and I just absolutely hate it when I have to do that because it's like something that's kind of beyond my control. So,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
so
because having your this doing this at night has become a nightly routine for you, Monday through
mhm.
Friday, and well, Sunday through
Well,
Friday, let's say.
Sunday through Friday, if you think about it.
Yeah, so it disturbs your 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 routine, and we none of us like our routine disturbed.
Right. And a reminder to those in the chat again, if you guys have anything grabs your attention, or you have anything you want to ask or comment on anything, feel free to do so. We'll try to answer the questions best of our ability. So, one of the other things I'll do right now is I'll, of course, continue to hand it over to Rick. Rick, would you like to give an intro? Basically share any links, tell anybody, talk about any projects you're doing. The
Yeah,
shtick.
yeah. Well, there's my link that I just put in the chat. That's for my channel here on YouTube. where usually Tuesdays I have a show that I do. Usually, just lately it's talking about whatever. Um, what was that, Mike?
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. But yeah, usually it's me talking about whatever. I started to get it so I can draw along while talking to everybody in the chat, so they can see what I'm drawing, and just letting them know what's going on with Cross Comics, which in a sense is letting them know what's going on with me as well. But it's supposed to be just a chill stream. Hopefully soon, I will be starting up more streams. I'm not sure when and all that, but hopefully soon.
Hmm.
So yeah, just
Any plans on doing that devotional thing you were doing a while back?
this verse of the day.
Yeah.
Um, I might actually do. I've half thought of it mildly. I might end up doing that again, but I'm gonna wait till I get my own place. That way, I can get a good setup for doing that sort of thing. Even doing this, you know, that's probably when I'll do a lot more streaming when I get my own place, so I can have everything a good setup, shall we say? Not that this isn't a bad setup, but it's nice when I can have a
When
more permanent.
when you're a little more secure, you have your own place, you have a job and all that.
Yeah.
Um, anything more you'd like to talk about?
Nothing. Nothing. Towards this stuff at the moment that I can think of.
All right. Well, a little promo work here on my end. So, of course, we'll have you back on tomorrow night and Wednesday for So we'll be back tomorrow night for the Niche newscast, and then of course this Friday I have R.J. Carter from Critical Blast coming in to co-host the weekly, our weekly look back through comics history, the historical comic retrospect, where of course we'll be continuing our look through March of 1940 this Friday, and we'll be looking at Big Shot Comics #1 from Columbia Comic Publications. We'll be introducing everybody to Columbia's versions of Skymen and the Face. The Face, a pretty generic, uh, you know, name in comics. This
Yeah.
particular case, the face, I believe, is a hero. So that's what's coming up this week on the mic stand. Um, just waiting for. Hopefully, Metal will get here soon, so that we can talk a little bit about
Friday night.
on Friday. As we had some interesting discussions as well as some interesting reads over it.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me just try something. Try a couple things here. Let's see.
Oh.
Hmm.
So of course we are going to have the going over of Friday, the retro comic review. That's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing for it. The retro comic review.
Well, historical comic retrospect is what I call it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying for on Sundays, just you can call it the retro comic review segment when you talk with whoever hopefully is here about what went on that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, well, Metal and I, as we were saying, we went over Centaur this past Friday. And
Yeah.
so, we went through like 4 features. Amazing Man. Dean Denton's scientific detective. Phantom of the Fair, and then and the Arrow. And I know, like I know from what I gathered, because Metal was with me once before when we read through some of those stories, and he I think he's becoming a bit more of a fan of the Dean Denton features.
Yeah,
Like
I know I've been with you a couple times reading through them too. For Phantom of the Fair, I remember him,
yeah.
and I think Arrow maybe once before.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, Arrow, which is in the Funny Pages comic, um, which I believe you said you weren't sure if you found anything too funny about that, but in the comments, if I remember correctly, but we don't have like every book. We just happen to look upon like the next book we have from the Funny Pages series will be the last one, issue 42. So.
Yeah,
Um,
I forget what comments I said on Friday. Well, I know the one thing I said was, of course, does Bo have a partner? I mean, does Arrow have a partner sidekick named Bo, or partner
hmm,
named Bo? Bo and Arrow.
hmm. Yeah. So, anyways,
But that can of course wait till Metal gets here to go into more detail on that.
yeah, and
Anything else that maybe in the articles you might
no,
have?
I guess yeah. I was just as you were about to say it. I was just thinking the same thing. I'm gonna look to see if there's anything of interest on bounding into comics to see if there's anything of interest we can probably talk about. Oh yeah, so I guess that one of the issues that I guess has started to come up a bit here. Um, Apparently, the X-Men books have been hiding exposition and first character appearances behind QR codes. So, and now we got an article here talking about Gail Simone defending that practice. So maybe we'll take a look at that while we're waiting to see if Metal shows up. So, Marvel Comics writer Gail Simone defends X-Men books hiding exposition and first character appearances behind QR codes. We're all trying to make these books something fun, quote unquote. All right,
Okay, depending on how you're doing that, I don't think you're going to make it fun with that.
yeah. Well, I have heard a few comments here and there that apparently people are doing this, so that they've been doing it, I guess, for a bit here. But anyways, so contrary to popular opinion, Marvel Comics writer Gail Simone is a staunch supporter of the latest X Men. Were you about to say something, Rick?
No,
Of the latest X Men relaunches, quote, first issue gimmick of hiding both relevant exposition and first character appearances behind QR codes. As previously reported, upon reaching the conclusion of any given first issue published as part of X Line's new Post Krakoa from the Ashes initiative, readers will be met with a giant, unmissable QR code.
okay. Hello, Netsumi. Netsumi says, I like wrestling and anime. Oh, that is good. We do discuss wrestling here, and we do discuss anime here. Wrestling is usually in wrestling wrap up or something in this day and age history.
Yeah. Natsumi Niyori Cha, or I guess that could be chapter or character. Yeah, that's the name. All right.
Well,
All
it's
right.
good to know that I pronounced that right.
Yeah. And we will be talking a little bit of wrestling later on, a little later on. We're just going over this article right now. I'll be sure to watch y'all. Then I then I dropped a sub. Okay. Were
Well,
you
thank
were you
you.
here Friday? Were you here Friday when we were doing the historical comic retrospect? Yeah, I'm a
I'm a
VTuber.
Cool, cool, cool. I don't. I've heard of YouTubers, but I don't know a lot of what you guys do exactly.
Well,
Uh,
VTubers are people who will YouTube, but it's called VTubing because instead of being like actual live on camera like you and I are right now, they'll usually put like an animated type of it'll be like an avatar of
Avatar.
their. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That sounds interesting. In some ways, I'd like to
Well,
do
one of
that at
one
some
of
point.
our one of our other one of the other people we've had, one of my other subscribers is a VTuber as well, Leto Enchanted. He's done some VTubing. I think solid the guy going by the name Neo Gamer now, he's done that too a bit before. So yeah, usually they're just YouTubers who instead of using their own actual physical appearance will use an avatar.
Yeah, Natsumi says we are live streaming, but instead of using a camera, we use a animated character, mostly anime, and it's rigged to our face and stuff. Cool. Actually, I think I have another friend that does that every so often. Marsupio Gamer,
Yeah.
one of Metal's co-host over on the Vomitorium.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think he does it on his channel when he's playing games.
Yeah. So anyways, let's get back to the article then. Welcome Natsumi. I hope you'll
Yeah,
enjoy the show.
yeah, and
Um
sometimes we go over articles about anime as well here
yeah.
too.
We just happened upon this one first. So, and if you haven't already, of course, if you can like and share, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated as well. So, anyways, upon scanning the code with their smartphone or tablet, the reader will then be taken to a special bonus page, the issue as hosted on Marvel Comics official website.
And okay, Natsumi, thanks for stopping by. Hope to see you again soon.
Oh, is she taking off?
Yeah, Natsumi says this is a nice setup, but I must leave due to going to college meeting tomorrow. Take care.
Oh, and speaking of our other guest tonight, hey, Metal.
Hello.
All right, this is okay, and Rick had already read that. All right, we just
And
started going over this article, so we'll finish this up, and we'll probably go back and talk a bit. But actually, before I do continue on, Metal, would you like to do an intro real quick before we continue on with the article here?
No, I'm good.
All right. Okay, so we'll continue on with the article, then we'll talk about what we read on Friday there. So, however, rather than being small character interactions or canon respecting moments of fan service that have no actual impact on the story at hand, these bonus pages instead contain at least as seen in the I think it's supposed to be as seen, not as seen, but seen in the three published thus far: X Men Volume One, Volume Seven, Number One, Phoenix Volume One, Number One, and NYX Volume Two, Number One. The full-on first-time appearances of each book's respective villains, and in the case of X Men, a group who appears will serve as the From the Ashes era's overreaching main antagonist.
Overarching.
Overarching. Okay. Though Marvel Comics executive editor and current X-Men line editor Tom Brevoort um, has confirmed that these pages will definitely be included in each book's eventual collected editions. They're looking behind a QR code.
Locking.
They're locking behind a QR code has still raised a number of concerns among fans, particularly in terms of this gimmick being rendered completely broken by future website migration or server change by Marvel Comics official website, as well um, as just how this gimmick um, will
Into
factor
an issues.
into an issue's collectability.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. And it's just the fact that, what if somebody doesn't have access to a QR reader? There are many people that would buy the comics but wouldn't deal with the whole QR thing. So they're missing, it seems like, some important stuff, you know. So
Mhm.
I don't think it's good for that reason, possibly. Any, do you know about this metal or have any thoughts?
Yes. I was yelling about this with a friend in a call last night.
Mm.
Okay.
Are you for or against?
I'm against this in general. Dog, shut up. Sorry, I have to pet sit, and that dog just will not shut up at all times. Just keeps barking nonstop.
Well, it's not
But
too loud. It's not too bothersome.
yeah, I'm just
At least to
against
us.
it on principle. The fact that it is a part of a different medium in general, right? Um, you bought a comic. You should read a comic. There's some cool things you might be able to do with QR. Like my buddy even said, if you're reading a certain book and they have like a playlist of songs on Spotify or something set up that would match up with reading the book on different pages, that would be cool. But actually locking content behind it, it's like no, you literally bought a physical comic book. You know, stick to the medium that you're in.
Mm. It, it
Because what
it's
happens if
almost like
the download page?
it almost sounds like they're trying to use the comic to try to generate more traffic to their website.
Possibly, but it's like, what if the server host or the download page for the QR just stops working one day? So somebody gets this comic and they can never just read that book, that page off the book.
Yeah. And that's sort of what
I
was
think
being said in that last little part that we read.
Mhm. So, anyways, getting ready to continue on with the article here. Let's see. Take, for example, the Cabal seen in the below bonus page from X-Men #1. Will their first so here's the thing that they're talking about. Zealot, the Doctor, the Means, the Chairman.
Chairman.
Will their first appearance be recorded as this single issue, despite the fact that they don't technically appear in the book itself? Or will it be the trade collecting um, or will it be the trade collecting the issue wherein they actually do appear on a printed page? Any thoughts on that?
And actually, that just in itself is possibly another cash grab, too, you know, because, oh, if you want the printed version of the pages, then you need to get the trade paperback. That's just shilling out how much ever money for the trade paperback, when this stuff comes out. So it's another way to get some money.
Hmm.
Well, this is also just a general problem, right? They've had trouble moving floppies altogether. Like even before this, they just have trouble moving floppies. and a lot of people have decided like they're just going to wait for the trade or like maybe even the omnibus way later on, the stuff that actually you'll see at Barnes and Noble, because people don't want to go into a comic store, and they've been trying to move floppies more. And it's like, well, do you think this is going to help you move floppies? Do you think people are going to want to buy the floppy because of this, or are they just also still going to wait for the trade later? That may
Yeah.
never come if your comic only runs 6 issues because it got canceled early.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, continuing on here, the problem only snowballs when looking at how, rather than group of collective, seemingly already established villains. In parentheses, the zealot is almost undoubtedly Cassandra Nova, and the doctor is likely former Orchis executive Dr. Alia Gregor, in parentheses. Both Phoenix number 1 and NYX number 1 introduce completely new individual villains for their protagonists to face. Um, that's kind of an interesting.
Round table.
Yeah. And while these concerns weigh heavily on those actually buying the books, the same cannot be said for the aforementioned Simone. Taking notice of the Twitter discourse that erupted around the topic earlier this week, the latest Uncanny X-Men writer declared, quote, "They're fun. They have little hints of what's coming. They are only in the first issues, where anyone got the idea that this was forever or that you could never read the last page is baffling." Well, do either you want to comment on that? How do you think people got the idea? You guys have any, I guess, theories as to how people
Oh,
may have got
it,
the idea?
if anything, they should have the opposite idea. Because one of the things I heard about this is that this was going to help prevent spoilers and stuff due to the fact that it was going to have to, you would have to actually open up the book to get the QR code and everything, which I thought was just completely stupid. Because having it be a digital object means that it was going to get spoiled because then somebody was going to scan the QR code, which means they have this digital picture available right there, and they were just going to share it on Twitter. I haven't even read the book, and I've seen this last page that they're talking about like 50 times now. Now,
Okay.
maybe that could be a good marketing campaign if they were trying to get some buzz around this by pissing people off or whatever. I have no clue. It doesn't make me want to buy the book anymore, but I've read the page. If anything, it's going to be the only thing from the book anybody sees.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So basically, it almost sounds like you're saying that whatever their plan was may have actually backfired.
Possibly.
Yeah. Met in turn with the above criticism regarding the single issue being incomplete versus its collected count. Now, based on that statement right there, I think it goes back to something you just said a few minutes ago, Metal, that whether or not people will just wait for the trade paperbacks as opposed to buying the floppies. I mean, if they don't want to put up with a QR code, they might just wait for the trade paperbacks then.
I mean,
So,
people are going to wait for the trade paperback anyway. They just have no reason to buy floppies at this point.
yeah. Simone's pushed back, quote, "It is astounding to me that anyone is flummoxed by this," unquote. Quote, "To add a page to a trade paperback takes about 5 minutes to decide to do," unquote. She argued. Quote, "Bonus material gets added to collections all the time," unquote.
Yeah, but the bonus material isn't usually a page of a story.
Hmm.
that you're counting as part of the story.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Usually,
call this bonus material.
yeah, it's usually the bonus material is sketches of pages or pages that were cut for whatever reason. It's like deleted scenes from a movie, a deleted page you might get or something. As bonus
Rick, you're
material.
reverting a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure what I
Yeah,
can do. Maybe it's too close to my fan.
yeah,
But
it's not too bad, but I was just letting you know it's.
were you able to make out what I said?
More or less. I guess to add to that, instead of calling this bonus materials, it's something that like video games have been doing for a long time. That's been kind of ticking people off. And it's like, hey, why is the comic industry trying to emulate a negative part of the video game industry? And it's where it's like we'll have a finished video game, and then we'll carve off sections of the otherwise finished video game to sell them to people for DLC, stuff that should have just been in the base version of the game. Now, this at least you don't have to pay extra for, but you still have to go out of your way to get it. And it's just
Yeah,
like, why are you making me wait to get DLC for a comic I bought?
yeah.
All right. So with that, getting back to the article, then, um, turning her attentions to X-Men readers at large, Simone then declared, "Quote, folks, we're all trying to make these books something fun, something like comics used to be. Behind the scenes stuff, mini interviews, letter, a mini X bullpen column. Well, I mean, if you really want, go back to like the Golden Age anthologies. That those were, and we'll talk a little bit
Yeah,
more about what we read later. But
I was going to say what they might have been better to do with these QR codes is put towards like you're saying some older stuff that's on their website or preview pages, 2 or 3 preview pages of upcoming comics, you know to try and gain people's interest.
yeah. All right. So, quote, for the first issues, they added bonus teaser pages by the actual creative teams, unquote. She added, quote, that's all, unquote. Responding to one fan who bluntly asserted, quote, gate locking content behind a phone gimmick sucks. Hate having incomplete content in the books. Do not anticipate these codes will work in a year and do not intend to continue buying floppies of this run, unquote. Simone further insisted, quote, it's one bonus page in one issue.
Yeah, which
Uh,
makes it all worse, I think, maybe.
mhm. All right. So the next QR code featuring entry in the X Lines from the Ashes publishing endeavor, X Force Volume 7, Number 1, is currently set to begin its sortie on July 31st. That's this Wednesday. Meanwhile, the first issue of Simone's Uncanny X-Men run is on track to hit shelves on August 7th. So that's the following. So, and then that's it for that article. So, any further thoughts on what we just read, guys?
Just probably a bad idea.
Gail Simone is the last person who should ever be doing damage control for anything.
Yeah, there's that too.
All right. So
And she's
anyway,
only doing it because it's on one of her books.
Yeah, she always gets active on anything that has to do with one of her books. You notice there's always controversy on one of her books.
hmm, yeah. And just think, I actually got her confused with Kelly Sue DeConnick at one time, till I had, I think, RJ and Rick, correct me, because of that quote that that I guess it was Kelly Sue DeConnick who said, who I thought it was said by Gail Simone. The whole, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. I actually originally thought that I thought I had heard that was Gail Simone who said that, but
No,
I've had
no.
several people tell me that that no, that was actually
We have
Kelly
a
Sue.
new person here, 4K, says, "Hey guys, I hate her books."
All right.
Well, thank you for stopping by, 4K. I'm not a big fan. No, I'm not sure what's hers or what I've read of hers or whatnot. Just because I don't usually pay attention to who the writer is and all that, and that's my bad. So maybe I like her stuff, maybe I don't. Maybe I like some of it, maybe I hate some of it. I don't know.
Yeah, and of course, if you haven't already, 4K, if you can help us out by liking, sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. And of course, if anything we talk about grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. So now, with all that being said, and before we try to find another article, actually we have another comment from 4K. I can never get behind an author that makes their politics come first. Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah,
the whole.
I
Yeah, I
definitely
think
get
we
that
all
for
agree
sure.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well, in the
sometimes I
past,
just try.
Oh
Go
wait,
ahead.
I
No.
think Metal's about to say something here.
I was gonna say in the past, Gail has made some okay stuff, though I want to mostly blame that on editorial because I've never enjoyed any original property that she's made. But she has a capacity that if editorial tells her to make something okay, that she can. Unlike that other person you mentioned, Kelly. Um, but Gail was also the one who gave us women in refrigerators. So, as much as she tries to say that was a joke, and to some level there probably was a level of jokiness behind it, she's still the person who gave us women in refrigerators. So
Oh,
Okay,
that
and
was a
continue to
year.
remind
care
me
for
again
Gail.
of that. Remind me again of that because I'm not sure what.
That was a
what
Well, I
website
think
that talks about all of the women that have been quote unquote fridged, which is a reference back to a Green Lantern comic where
yeah,
he
I
walks
have
in
that
and
comic.
his yeah, and like his
And
I don't remember if they were married at the time or not. They might have been
no,
fiancés,
they
but his
weren't.
his fiance was shoved into a refrigerator and he found her
By
dead in
major
there.
disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have that, and that was right near the beginning of Kyle Rayner's run as Green Lantern. I think it was the third or fourth issue that he was in.
Yeah. And it was supposed to just be like, but you see this the other way around too. Like if a girl's dating somebody, the guy equally gets in trouble because it's a good motivating factor to kill off somebody's like lover. But she made this whole website just like cataloging every single woman who's been fridged as a driving factor for men, trying to make it almost like a sexist thing. Didn't even bother to list all the men who got fridged though.
Yeah, but it's actually I like that Green Lantern run. So if she wrote that, I must
No,
say
she didn't
that.
write it. She was complaining about it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I was
No.
going to say she wrote, but
Okay.
go ahead, Mike.
With all that being said, we have one more comment here. Where we bring me
Out of the fridge.
bring me
That's
out
like
of the
bring me
bridge.
out of-
Yeah.
But
Okay.
All
All right. So
yeah, I was just saying, her stuff. If she's written some good stuff, I'm sure she probably written some good stuff in the past, and I guess I'd read it. But as I probably wouldn't support her directly in anything. Like
yeah.
if she was doing a book, an indie book or whatever, I probably would not support that. Well, I know I wouldn't. But anyways, on to whatever Mike was trying to get on to.
Okay. So now that of course Metal's here, let's talk a little bit about what we went over on Friday because we
Do
did
we have
read
to?
some pretty. Huh?
I said, do
What was
we
that?
have to?
I just generally want you for those who may not have been here or or just kind of quick recap. I just want to I just want people to hear what you had to say about what we read on Friday overall, and give your impressions. That's what I always want to do with when I kind of wish I get more of my guests on to do that. On the following Sundays after they've been on, but doesn't. But you and Rick are the only ones I've been able to do that with in recent memory. So. Anyways, yeah, so we went over, of course, comics went on sale from March of 1940 from Centaur Publications this past Friday. Metal was on with me. We, of course, the features we focused in on were Amon the Amazing Man, originally created by Bill Everett, but what was taken over by A.L. Kirby. Um, let's see, Phantom of the Fair. Dean Denton, scientific detective, and the Arrow. Now, of course, as I remember, Metal of the four features we read, I believe that the Dean Denton one was the one that was the one you liked the most, right?
Yeah, it was the only one that I think I would give an overall passing grade to. Arrow came close. That one came pretty close. That was kind of adequate. At least it had like a decently written villain in the Arrow comic that we read.
Mm-hmm.
But Dean overall, that was a pretty good one. The other two, though, I don't think I'd give a passing grade whatsoever. This is the second time, I think, maybe the third. I'm not even sure, but it's at least the second time that I've had a Amon the Amazing Man comic when I've been on with you, because we've read Centaur a few times now when I've been on, and I have not been impressed any time that I've read one of these with you. Now, it could be that I've only come on after Kirby's taken over. I've never actually experienced an Everett Amon, and it might be better back when he was the one running it. But
Right.
Since the ones I've read, I have not enjoyed a single one of them. They've all been unimpressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bill Everett, more famously, also aside from creating Amon the Amazing Man, he also created Namor the Submariner as well. So, a little tidbit for you. Rick, you were about to say something?
Yeah, well, the other one that's not been good the last time, a couple times I'm not sure how good it was this time, but from what Metal said on Friday when he was wrapping them up, is I think he put the lowest one was Phantom of the Fair.
Yeah, Phantom of the Fair was the one I put the lowest. That one was kind of just.
Yeah, the last couple times the last time I know I read Center with Mike, I thought the Phantom of the Fair was like probably the worst one, second to last, depending on how many we read.
Yeah, and one of the things I mentioned on Friday when we are kind of going over, when we are going over, after we read all of them and stuff, that one of the points I even made was, even I had to admit that for lead feature, and that's what Phantom of the Fair was. It was a lead feature. It was a little underwhelming. First off, it was only 8 pages. 8-9 pages. So 8 pages. So for a lead feature, especially back in those days when most books, the lead features were 12 to 13 pages, was kind of a little underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I remember, jumped a lot.
What was that, Mel?
It also kind of felt like it jumped a lot, right? I remember you bringing this up. I was kind of joking about it too, but at one point you're like, "Well, how did he know where to go after this? Like, how did he know where the villains were?" And I was like, "Oh, well, the same way he knew where these guys were to save them from the explosion at the last second, even though it's never been shown to us before that."
Yeah,
he just knows.
Either a lot of the action is happening off panel, and we're just supposed to assume that that's what's going on, that it's just happening off panel, or it's something that when they wrote this, they didn't stop to think, okay, maybe might want to elaborate on this a bit and show exactly how this came about.
Yeah, I know the first. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I just finished what I was saying, so you go ahead.
Yeah. I was just saying. I know probably the first couple times I either read with you or heard it being read, Phantom of the Fair. I think it was all right the first couple times, but it's seeming these last few times the writing is getting real sloppy
Well,
compared to a lot of other stuff where it's getting slowly better.
well, yeah, and it's kind of funny because I know I've mentioned this before, and Metal knows I mentioned this on Friday when we were talking a bit about it too. Um, but the idea being that that Centaur Publications, right, would eventually close its doors sometime in 42. It started back in 1936, and then so and at first before he moved to Quality Comics, um, a clock was featured in some of Centaur's titles. It's debatable as to which comic he technically made his first appearance in, whether that was funny picture stories or funny detective stories, something like that. But but even the clock, but Centaur basically came somewhat. I think some of their features did last up until like 44, but for the most part, they were pretty much closed down by 42. So
Yeah,
we're
which
at Mark
unfortunately speaks to what we're gonna,
years.
which I think unfortunately speaks to what we're gonna see over the next year and a half or so, or 2 years in them. We're gonna probably see the quality of writing go down drastically.
Well, we'll see, and probably as we read through this stuff, depending upon the comic and stuff, we'll learn why like some comics, let's say, didn't make it out of the 50s, and others are still going on today. I think as we
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too. That I think I mentioned this. It's like, well,
yeah,
I'm not
you did
really
now just reiterating what
surprised
you initially
why
said.
these guys lost out to their competition at the end. And really, though, it could be reflective since I don't really know the politics of what was going on at that company before it went out. But the quality of writing could be reflective of the disarray of the company, like why it was on the way out already. You know.
Well, here's another thing. Another thing that I know RJ and I have talked a little bit about on some of the shows. Um, and I've mentioned this before too. So Will Eisner, well-known comic book creator, right? Well-known. Um, he actually had a bit of a publish. He and his people were the ones who were basically writing and doing a lot of these comics for a bunch of different companies. They were submitting material for Centaur. They were submitting material for Quality. They were submitting material for Fiction House. They were submitting material for a number of the different companies at the time. So that could be playing in too. Not to say like DC had their own set of writer stuff like that. I think Archie may have had their own. MLJ Enterprise may have had their own, but Will Eisner and basically the people surrounding him were doing work for a number of different companies.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
I could see your freelancers, shall we call them? Just submitting articles to two or stories to 2 or 3 different places and seeing where they could get some money. Because they weren't contracted to one particular one. Why not? They're all doing anthologies. Maybe it'll get picked up, right? Maybe it's a couple some steady bucks for a few months.
yeah.
You
In
know.
fact, as I recall, going back to the Dean Denton story for a moment, I remember when we were talking a little bit about the Conqueror, you know, Dean Denton's arch enemy. Yeah, I think Metal, you had actually remembered the story we previously read on him, where he was acting more like a cult leader.
Yeah, yeah.
Had
When he was
all the
talking
people
through
going
like
to
the
like, hey,
radio.
what was that?
Yeah, and he was contacting his cult and everything like through the radio.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I think one of the other things you brought this up, Metal, and we talked a little bit about it too, was, and this is one of those what I've come to call the leaps in logic, right? When the police were trying to get hold of Amon, and even though they knew about him and they knew he was called the Green Mist, they still tried to cuff him. Remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like whoever wrote that comic did not have a lot of faith in the general competency of the police, and I'm not even talking about like a regular officer. The guy who tried to cuff him was like the chief or sergeant or somebody who was in charge of the precinct. Tried to cuff him. Is like the guy who's supposed to be at the very top, who probably worked his way up there. You have this little faith in the confidence or competency of his ability that this dude who mentioned the Green Misses, I don't care who he is, puts a handcuff on him. It's like no, nobody would be that dumb.
Well, the other thing about that too, but yeah, we have to understand too, around that time, and even though this is happening more in the 30s, you know, late 30s, but still ever present in the early to mid 40s. There was some, what they would call some local corruption going on in a lot of the police stations too. But there was some sense of local corruption where
Yeah,
the were kind of considered a bit more corrupt, and they were playing the
corrupt cops aren't necessarily bad at their job. They're not necessarily stupid. A lot of them choose to look the other way or do bad things because they're corrupt. But like, you could be a corrupt cop and still be, intelligent and not try to handcuff a guy who could turn into mist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Good
it makes
point.
no sense. It's like, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think you need to find some other way to,
So
contain him.
So I think, as I recall, when I asked you, for the order from the one you like the most, the one you like the least, I think it went Dean Denton, Scientific Detective, The Arrow. Let's see, Amazing Man, and Phantom of the Fair. That was your order.
That was the order.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with that being said, we can move on from that now, because I think we got a good chunk of commentary out of that. So I did want to, before going back to seeing if there are any other articles of interest we go over, there was something I wanted to bring up on the wrestling. I know you guys aren't following wrestling as close as I am. I know you guys did probably when you were younger, what have you. But something happened this weekend that was kind of some historical significance, just because of the names involved. So on this past Saturday's Collision show on AEW, Dustin Rhodes had teamed with Kevin Von Erich's sons, Marshall and Ross Von Erich, to become the new Ring of Honor World Six-Man Tag Team Champions. Now, the reason this is somewhat significant, because, of course, prior to this, of course, Dustin had been a former World Six-Man Tag Champion in WCW back in the early 90s with Big Josh and Z-Man, also known as the late Matt Bourne and the late Tom Zink, respectively. And of course, Marshall and Ross Von Erich, third generation Von Erichs. Of course, their father, along with their two uncles, David and Kerry Von Erich, had not only won numerous World Six-Man Tag Championships in world class and eventually in world class, and as well as Dusty, Dustin's father being a multi-time World Six-Man Tag Champion with the Warriors. So, you see a lot of this. You see a lot of the lineage there. Of course, the Von Erichs, of course, back in the 80s, had a legendary feud with the Freebirds, who were the fabulous Freebirds, who were made up at that time of Terry Bam Bam Gordy, Michael P.S. Hayes, and Buddy Jack Roberts, who had formerly been with one half of the original Hollywood Blondes with Jerry Brown back in the 70s. So that was something that I found interesting. Again, just more from the historical aspect, and they had a big celebration after the match. You can go check out on YouTube. But Dustin is basically on his retirement. I think he announced a month or so ago that he might be retiring sometime within the next year. So if that's the case, I'm personally glad to see they're giving him one last title run, even if it is the World Six-Man Tag title run here. And I think it's good pairing him up with with Marshall and Ross Von Erich to help further establish them for this generation. In fact, Marshall had actually talked about the fact that they're the age now that their uncles, David and Kerry, were around when the two of them had somewhat passed. Well, I think David was 25 when he passed in '84 from endrositis or something like that. Acute enteritis, I think, is what it was. It was died over in Japan. And then Kerry, of course, anybody who followed wrestling back in the late 80s, early 90s knows what happened in Kerry's case. His daughter actually did some wrestling in the 2000s for TNA for a while there, Lacey. So just something of a bit more historical significance. I don't know if you guys have anything more. I would have thought that maybe you might have Metal, because of course these guys are from your neck of the woods there in Texas, and I figured and AEW has actually been doing stuff from Arlington over the next few weeks as they prepare for their All In pay-per-view. So any thoughts on what I just rambled on about, guys?
Well, I just got
none
one
at all.
question. One sort of question. The six-man tag, is that 3 people on each team or 6?
Right. 3 people on each team, correct.
Okay, just because, unfortunately, six-man tag makes it sound like there's
6 men on one team, yeah. No, because it's because 6 men are involved in a match in which 3 men do each team.
Yeah,
there have been some very interesting combinations over the years. As I mentioned earlier, of course,
I'm used to the regular tag teams, 2 people on each team.
Right. Yeah.
No, this is Marvel versus Capcom rules.
Marvel versus Capcom.
Yeah, it's a video game. It's a 3-on-3 fighter where it's a tag switch. You get 3 characters from a roster of Marvel or Capcom characters. There's like a story where they interact with each other too, and you versus somebody else that each have your 3 characters that you swap between. And you could play like Mega Man next to Spider-Man with Ryu from Street Fighter if you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've played that before.
Yeah, so.
Although I think they do have a strictly just Marvel one that's 3 as well.
There was a Marvel Fighters, but that's nowhere near as that was short-lived and nowhere near as popular as Marvel versus Capcom.
Oh yeah, true, because Marvel versus Capcom's got at least 3 different iterations.
Yeah, because we try to forget about Marvel versus Capcom Infinite.
Yeah, because I know there was originally just the X-Men one, well, at least for Marvel, and then they did just Marvel Hero stuff.
Well, it was X-Men versus Street Fighter at first. Then it was Marvel Heroes versus Street Fighter, and then that evolved into Marvel versus Capcom, and then they made 2, 3, and then MVC Infinite, which we all forget about. But anyway, that's just going back to your wrestling thing. It's Marvel versus Capcom rules. That's what the 6-man tag is.
Yeah.
But the 6-man tag team wrestling has been around longer than the game.
It's just
back to.
I think at this point, there's more people who play video games than watch wrestling, so it's a lot easier to get a picture into a lot of people's heads.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too. This is the first time I've ever. Yes, I've heard about I'll almost say it as a 6-man tag, but I've heard about 3 people against 3 people doing. But it's the first time I've heard about there being a championship belt for
Yeah.
that.
Well, the NWA in particular had a number of different territories that actually had world. Again, NWA. The world class territory, which was called Big Time Wrestling throughout the 60s and 70s, they had a version of the World 6-Man Tag Team Championships. The Tennessee territory, Mid America had a World 6-Man. Now granted, there were times, throughout NWA's prime when where there were certain titles that they didn't, where they didn't have like one world tag title, or they didn't have one United States heavyweight title, or they didn't have one world 6-man title. Territory in those cases, territories were allowed to have a world title. Like throughout NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance's heyday, the only titles where there was only one for the entire organization, going not just from the top but all the way down through the territories, were the World Heavyweight, the World Junior Heavyweight, the World Women's, and the World Women's Tag. Those are the only 4 that were basically, and the idea is that if you were one of those champions, instead of just staying in one territory, you'd actually tour around the territories and defend the belts in each against the top stars of each territory. So, anyways, I wanted to get that out there because again, it was something of a bit of, because of the names involved, it was something of a bit more of a historical significant aspect of it. So, I guess well, let's see. We're just past the hour mark. You guys want to do at least one more article? Shall I find one more article to go?
If you can find one.
What was that?
I said I am up for it if you can find one.
All right. Let's see.
Unless we can figure something out to talk about.
Yeah. All right, let me see. And of course, if you guys want to, you can talk amongst yourselves and chat while I'm.
No, I'm not sure whether there's anybody. Oh, nobody's commented in the chat in a while, so I'm not sure who's still here for that.
Mm-hmm.
Says we have 3 people watching on YouTube.
Yeah, that's you, me, and Mike is 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew I was. I figured Mike was. I wasn't quite sure whether you were or not. I don't know. Yeah. But we had a couple new people here in the chat tonight. So that's good. Forte and Natsumi. Sumi.
Mm-hmm. That's how you pronounce it, Rick. Right. Yeah, some pretty generic stuff here. Nothing too overwhelming. Let's see.
You guys see how awful Batman the Cape Crusader looks?
Oh no! I don't watch modern stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be not a continuation, but almost like a spiritual successor to the Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Bruce Timm
Yeah,
is even supposed to be working on it. But It looks awful. I even just saw a screenshot today that somebody showed where they gender swapped the penguin, so it's Oswalda Cobblepot.
I think I think I did see that. I think I
Is,
did see
is,
something about that in our article piece.
did have they actually put out an episode, or is this just?
I don't know. I just saw a screenshot.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Well, let me pull. Well, maybe we can. Because I think I did see a headline there. I wasn't going to cover it because it's just same old with that usually. But since
I
you
know, and
brought it,
everybody was looking forward to it too. Like I saw a lot of talk. It's like, oh look, Tim's back. It's gonna be like the old stuff. I'm like, I'm not holding my breath. It's gonna be just as awful as all the other things, especially after I saw the way Harley Quinn looked in the teaser that they showed off. Like, nah, this is gonna be awful. And then they
Yeah,
started
I think
showing off
that's
some
what's.
screenshots, like with the penguin. Like, yeah, it's about as awful as I thought it was gonna be.
That's we got to go and ruin it with all the woke crap.
I think probably the only good part about it is that Diedrich, is it Bader? I think he's Bader. Diedrich Bader is still playing Batman, and he's been playing Batman for a while now. I think he's been a good voice of Batman. It just so happens that over half the stuff that they've had him play Batman in is awful. Like he also voices Batman in the Harley Quinn show, but he's voiced in a few of the movies and stuff too. And I think he's a really good pick for him, but they just aren't making good stuff.
hmm.
Yeah, they were doing quite good for the animated movies, anyways.
Oh yeah,
Of
yeah, like
course,
that whole long streak between Justice League War and Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, and there was like 10 or so, or maybe even up to a dozen movies in there. That was a pretty good streak. I wish they continued that.
yeah. Although I know people are saying Crisis is especially the second one wasn't that good, but I didn't think it was that bad. The Crisis, Infinite Crisis, is it Infinite
Oh
Crisis,
yeah, yeah. Actually, I just
Infinite Earths. Unfortunately, it's a three-parter at
Okay.
least.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
I was actually just seeing you know GMT, Rick. I don't think Mike does, but
Yeah,
GMT was just talking about Crisis, the movie. She seemed to enjoy it overall, but it was like a midish. It's like 5 out of 7 was her score for it, which is out of 7 is such a weird score, but that sounds like that's a total GMT thing for.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely not a 10, but it is it's above a 5 for sure. It's probably 6 or 7 out of 10, maybe 8.
Okay.
The first one was, I think, better than the second one.
Oh wait, now I think I remember where I think I just saw it as a headline, not necessarily on Bleeding Fool or Pounding in Comics. I think I saw it like when on one of my because I'm not finding it on either of these two sites here, but I think I did again I did see a headline on that, but it may not have been on.
Maybe on that new site that you're
No, I
saying.
didn't. I didn't check. I didn't check. It was
Well, I'm just
probably when
suggesting
I
maybe
when
check.
I when I opened up the Windows you know the Microsoft window or something like that. That's probably where I got it from. It's probably where I saw the headline because I thought I saw a headline on that. But yeah. But anyways, yeah. Well, couldn't find it, so that's all right though. Let's see now. Actually, actually one of the things like on Toonami last night. Not that I watched it, but I was aware of it. They did of course, they did the season 2 marathon for My Adventures of Superman series.
Yeah,
I guess because they finished up that. I guess they finished up running that season, and then next week they're going to be doing a marathon of Demon Slayer and Yaiba. I don't know what's going on if they're just going to be doing these because I know that they're down to the last few episodes Naruto Shippuden. Um, so I do know that they're down into the care. It's basically the very end of the series where they're talking about Naruto's upcoming marriage to Hinata, and everybody talking about like finding the best gift and all that. So like real focused on basically more or less the other characters as opposed to Naruto. So
Yeah.
but one of the things I do kind of hope, and I don't know if they're going to do this or not, because I do know that they did show more of the episodes after they took it off of adult of Toonami. But I do hope that once they finish the Shippuden, once they completely shown everything of Shippuden on the Toonami, that they'll start Boruto again, and this time show the entire show at least up through the episode that they most recently dubbed, and not just do like the first arc. But then again, I don't know if I don't based on what I'm seeing of how they're doing things there. I don't know if Toonami's going to be. I think this time, if it goes, it's going for good because it doesn't seem like they're trying. They're even trying to really bring in material from Japan and do it right. They're just like it does seem more like they're trying to push more and more their own original stuff. Like now, and granted, even the current Toonami is more stuff that's already previously been shown on other things. I mean, even though like they're doing double ups on One Piece right now, but they're still back in they're still back in the Dressrosa arc. I've already surpassed that in my own personal watchings. So, speaking of anime, though, one anime I did recently start watching as part of my watchings. This was an anime that was originally made back in 1978, but was only recently was only dubbed into English back in 2001. Future Boy Conan. That one looks pretty interesting, especially for the time it was originally done in. And of course, with the Ocean Seated people, there's a lot of newer people in there now that weren't there before. But obviously, because of certain things that happened in recent years, obviously, with like the passings in particular of Kirby Morrow and Gabe Kuth in the last few years here. Metal, have you ever seen Future Boy Conan?
Oh yeah. That's actually oddly an adaptation of an American science fiction novel called the Incredible Tide by Alexander Key.
Oh, okay. Well, one of the other things that I saw on it too, based on like what I was able to what I was able to read from it and stuff like that, or as I was doing the research into what it was about and stuff. Apparently, Future Boy Conan was the directorial debut of Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Long before
and then he did a few other things in between then and Studio Ghibli. Like he did, well, technically it was with Ghibli, but it was before they did any of their original stuff. He also did like the Lupin the Third movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. So,
oddly enough, Japan's done a lot of adaptations of Western work, and a lot of times they're a lot closer than when a Western studio decides to adapt the Western work, even back then. Like, there's a really good manga and I think anime adaptation of Anne of Green Gables that's done that I highly recommend if anybody wants like a good adaptation of Anne of Green Gables. And there's a good adaptation. It's well, I haven't seen the second one, so I don't know if the second one's good. But the old version, if you go back, I think it was done in the 80s, is a Starship Troopers. And unlike the movie Starship Troopers, it actually follows the book pretty closely. They've got like the mechs and everything, and it's actually got Juan Rico instead of Johnny Rico. It's a good adaptation of it.
yeah. Well, I know Japan also did back in 1974, because I've seen this, when I've done my This Day in Each History segments. I know they did an adaptation of Heidi back in like
Yeah.
1974. So yeah, and then in more modern times now, grant this isn't exactly an adaptation of a book, but more of an adaptation of of a aspect in world history with putting in some supernatural elements into it. I don't know if you've ever heard of this particular anime um, metal. Have you ever heard of Le Chevalier d'Eon?
Yes.
Have you seen it or
No, no, I'm just aware of it.
yeah? And that's of course basically they put somewhat of a supernatural spin on it. So just for those who, and Rick, I'm sure you probably aren't sure what we're going to talk about here. So for Rick and for those who may not have heard of this before, so Le Chevalier d'Eon follows a real person, basically the with a slightly different history to him. There was a French knight by the name of Deon de Beaumont, who in real life um, would have probably been considered transgender. But what they said was he apparently suffered from some kind. I don't know the actual technical name of the disorder or disease or whatever, but essentially he supposedly didn't go through puberty. You know, um, he was a guy, but he had more feminine, features because apparently I don't know what the actual technical medical term for it was, but essentially he,
Yeah, well, then that wouldn't be technically transgender as far as I would know.
yeah, you know, but it was
No,
a natural. It was a
you could say
natural.
it's possibly intersex. Like there could be chromosomal issues causing different proteins to form, so where the person gets a more feminine figure. But yeah, that's the most you
But
could
one
technically
one of
call
the
it.
key things when talking about this particular things, basically, and I know this is going to be probably the more crude version since I can't necessarily think of a more euphemized way of saying this. But essentially, for all intents and purposes, um, his balls did not drop, as it were.
You know, there's actually something funny about that. There's an entire like lineage of people, or I wouldn't say lineage. It's like it's within their lineage. There's a chance that this happens in the Dominican Republic. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's like a Spanish sounding name, but there are boys who never, as a young age, look like boys. They don't develop properly. They have what functionally looks like female genitalia, but that's because before hydrotestosterone is introduced to a boy in the womb, it develops looking similar to female genitalia, right? Hydrotestosterone is what causes your genitals to form into the shape that you would have later in life. So they look like little girls until puberty, where your second dose of hydrotestosterone gets put out. And then they go from looking like little girls to looking like men. Some of them still a little more feminine in general, but they do go through puberty and become men. And it's like this entire thing within their culture just because of genetic traits that happened with the way that the proteins function. This is like a very rare thing, but enough that there's small little society, like little schools of boys like this that happened in reality. It's a very strange phenomenon that happens. But I assume
Sounds like a
something
lot
very
of
similar probably
interbreeding.
happened to this guy.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too. So in real world history, right? In real world history, because of his feminine appearance, he ended up becoming a French spy, answering to King Louis the I think the 14th. You know, because there were such names as King Louis the 14th, Madame Pompadour, um, and the anime itself had some pretty Catherine the Great in Russia, which where I'm going to lead with this. But but in the real world history, because of his feminine appearance, he took on the identity of Leah de Beaumont, um, and would serve as a French spy answering to King Louis the XIV himself, um, in which he would at some point become somewhat of a companion of Catherine the Great in Russia. Right, that was the real world history of it. In the anime, Diane de Beaumont had a sister named Leah de Beaumont. Leah, of course, was the spy, but then some circumstances happened um, where when her body was returned, apparently her sword was possessed by her soul, and when, of course, Diane would handle the sword, her her soul would then possess his body, and he would literally change from male to female. You know,
Yeah.
and then they'd have these sorcerers called poets, where they would do spells, but instead of speaking the spells, they would actually literally write it in the air. You know, again, it was a very interesting story in that they put a supernatural element onto some real world situations going on at the time. There were a lot of, I guess, famous King Louis the XIV, Madame Pompadour, Catherine the Great. Those are the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Let's see, anyone else? Francis Dashwood, and Francis Dashwood. That was actually a character that Vic voiced. Vic Mignogna voiced for that series. So,
Well, especially in that era too, it wasn't
oh,
entirely odd for a genre to have like a protagonist that almost goes through a magical girl treatment where they change sex via some form of possession, whether it's picking up a sword or something like that. Like Birdie the Mighty is another
mm,
example where Birdie was an alien space cop who came down to Earth, and in the issue with her, the original reason she came, there was a boy who nearly died during the encounter. And she's like, oh, well, I could save this guy's life, but I basically have to possess him for a while. So he gets to still be like a normal boy in his day life. But when there's trouble, he and Birdie have to switch places, and then he magically becomes Birdie during that time.
yeah.
So it's like there was a few different series that had very similar
It, it,
concepts.
how you mentioned that reminds me of a very similar of a somewhat of a similar situation in another anime manga series, Sadamitsu the Destroyer. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
seen that one. Where I guess there was a call to quote unquote the vulture, as it were, and she came to Earth way too early, and her landing unfortunately ended up killing a girl who happened to be a childhood friend of Sadamitsu, the main character, and she ended up basically taking out, even though her body was buried, basically taking over her identity, and then they would meet up again when they got older. And so I don't know if you've seen Sadamitsu the Destroyer before.
No, I'm familiar, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting stuff we're talking about with animes, aren't we? Some interesting twists and turns of what
Yeah.
Japanese
Oh, I
creators.
also remembered the name of those Dominican boys. They're called huevedoses, which literally means testicles at 12.
Okay. Yeah, actually,
Just for anybody listening, that's curious. Like that's a real thing that happens.
yeah. Um, actually, now that I was talking about Dion de Beaumont, let me see if I can find that information real quick, at least. Um, see, hopefully I can remember exactly. Oh, He's listed as Chevalier Deon or Chevalier. It's Charles Deon de Beaumont or Charlotte, born October 5th, 1728, passed away May 10th or May 21st, 1810. Let's
Yeah,
see.
well, I mean, like a chevalier just means knight, basically in French. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So Chevalier Deon was a French diplomat, spy, and soldier. Deon fought in the 7 Years' War and spied for France while in Russia and England. Deon had androgynous physical characteristics and natural abilities as a mimic and a spy. Deon appeared publicly as a man and pursued masculine occupations for 49 years, although during that time Deon successfully infiltrated the court of Empress Elizabeth of Russia by presenting as a woman. Starting in 1777, Deon lived as a woman and was officially recognized as a woman by King Louis the 16th. Okay, so um, I know they mentioned here that he suffered some kind of um,
Disability, for lack of a better word.
huh?
Suffered some sort of disability, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I thought they mentioned it in here that hmm, I'm just trying to see if I can life as a spy life. Yeah, maybe it's here. I'll read the legacy part here. So some of Deon's papers are at the Brotherton Library in Leeds, England. Some modern scholars have interpreted Deon as transgender. Um, Havelock Ellis coined the term Eonism um, to describe similar cases of transgender behavior. It is rarely used now. The Beaumont Society, a long-standing organization for transgender people, is named after Deon. Let's see. Yeah.
Sounds more like he lived as a male, and just as it said, it just did this other thing as a spy thing because he could.
No, but I thought when I'd read about this before, I thought I saw something where they had talked about, um,
Medical condition.
yeah, like he was. They had said he had some kind of medical condition where basically he didn't go through puberty, where maybe
Yeah, or
something
you
similar.
could have read that somewhere, maybe not where you're reading right now.
I,
Or if you're reading off Wikipedia, maybe they took it out.
maybe they changed it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's possible, but
to suit their agenda.
yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I can't seem to find it, but anyways,
Yeah, that's all right. So we are at the hour and a half mark.
Yeah,
Right?
I was thinking there probably wasn't
Uh,
much more to talk about anyways, and I didn't want to just keep you guys here doing dead air like this. So
yeah, yeah.
I think it would be a good time to probably start to
Wrap
wrap
up.
things up.
Yeah.
So let me see. So today is Sunday, July 28th. So let's take a look back at this weekend. Neat history. History. Let's see. Okay. All right. So with that, so first off, we're going to head back to yesterday. We're going to first head back 80 years ago yesterday, back to 1944, as on yesterday's date, 80 years ago yesterday, the 50th issue of Wings Comics went on sale from Fiction House on yesterday's date 80 years ago. Sold for 10 cents, was 48. Again, no additional information here. I'm guessing that Wings Comics was comics devoted to aviation,
Yeah.
aviation topics.
It
Uh,
probably has nothing to do with the 80 TV. I think it's 80s TV series called Wings as well.
yeah, yeah, I would agree there. Anyways, moving on to 1999 from yesterday, as on yesterday's date in 1999. Yesterday's date in 1999. Um, Magic Bus's Rebirthday premiered in Japanese theaters on yesterday's date in 1999. So 25 years ago yesterday, Magic Bus's Rebirthday premiered in Japan on yesterday's date back 25 years ago
Is
in
that
1999.
anything to do with the Magical School Bus?
No, I don't think so. I think that might predate the Magic School Bus, but for all I know. But anyways, moving on now. Now, 1999 was just so nice that we're gonna hit it twice.
I'm not sure how nice it was. So.
On 25 years ago today, on July 28th, um, on July 28th, 1999, Andre Franquins heirs and copyright holders win the trial against Walt Disney Animation Studios over their animated TV series version of Franquin's comics character Marsupilami, um, citing breaches of its license contract. Disney had failed to produce 13 half-hour episodes, um, in parentheses, instead producing 6 to 8 minute shorts, parentheses, or use its quote unquote best efforts to secure a commitment from a network to air the show. And it launched its marketing campaign during a time when the show was not being broadcast. Marceau also accused Disney of fraudulent concealment. The judge noted that Disney had decided to not devote sufficient resources to the Marsupilami project and had concealed this fact from Marceau. Um, Disney pays back the damage and hands the rights to the series back to Franquin's company, Marceau Production.
Oh
Any
wow!
comment on that?
But Disney got sued and lost. Yay!
Yeah. So I never watched Marsupilami. Did either of you?
No, I never even heard of it.
This is my first time hearing about it too.
Yeah. I mean, it was something that came out in the '90s, so we were all probably adults by then, anyway. So ten.
Hey,
No,
I watched cartoons in the '90s.
I was a child in the 90s.
So you would have probably had a chance to watch. I think it actually was on CBS on Saturday mornings for a while there.
Again, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. All right. So with that, now moving on to the last piece of each history from today, going back just 10 years ago today. On this date, 10 years ago today, as soon as I pull that up, WWE held its Monday Night Raw event held its Monday Night Raw event from the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. The show saw in the main event Seth Rollins and Chris Jericho go to a no contest. Saw Natalya team with Naomi to defeat Cameron and Alicia Fox. Let's see. The Usos with Dolph Ziggler defeated the team of The Miz and Ryback and Curtis Axel, a.k.a. Joseph Michael Hennig, a.k.a. the son of Kurt Hennig. And the show opened up with a match in which John Cena defeated Cesaro. That happened 10 years ago today. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Well, actually, before we go, we'll start with metal. And if you guys want to do an outro, share any links, anything, go for it. We'll start with metal. We'll go in counterclockwise order. We'll go metal, Rick, and then I'll wrap things up. So, metal, you're up.
No, I'm good.
You don't want to promote anything? Well,
Nope.
I guess I kind of know why. All right. Well, then we will move on to Rick then. And it looks like you already put up a link.
Yeah,
So, Rick,
just a link to my channel, which I did earlier. Just for those that are new here that might not know me, I do have my own YouTube thing. Use somewhat about my comics and just what's going on with my comic company, and that's me a little bit. So, and sometimes I have guests on my channel whenever they want to come on. Put out a link, but sometimes they don't. So, but anyways, I just talk about whatever, and that's usually on Tuesday nights. And hopefully, in the next month to 2 months, I'll be starting to do more streams or put more stuff up. Anyways, that was way too much to say. Just go. If you like what you see on the channel, subscribe.
all right. So with that, I thank everyone for being here. We'll be back here, of course, tomorrow for Morning Tuesday. Of course, I'll have Rick on with me tomorrow night. Well, going over some news articles. And also, don't forget this Friday, RJ Carter will be joining me as we'll be continuing our look down comics history lane looking back at March of 1940. This week we'll be introducing you to the world of Columbia Comic Publications. We're looking at Big Shot Comic Volume 1, Issue 1. Looking at introducing you guys to characters such as Skyman and the Face. Of course, these are Columbia's characters. Skyman's not to be confused with the Star Spangled Kid, who did at one point in his career take on the name Skyman during his days at DC. And the Face is a pretty generic character name in comic stuff. But anyways, with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.